Brian, welcome to the Sideshed podcast.
Hey Matt, how you doing? Thanks for having me, man. This is gonna be fun.
Thanks for joining us all the way from Georgia.
Yeah, it's almost bedtime here. You probably just got up.
Yeah, it's 9:20 a.m. It's all
Got up,
right.
hadn't even showered yet. You're talking to a guy who's ready to go to bed.
That's right. I've got a staff member in Florida, so I know the time zone.
Oh, very nice.
Man, we're here today to talk about contract negotiation and maybe as well, sales and negotiation, but also maybe a little bit about your background, because I know you mentioned offline that you came from blue collar, running a landscape business at one point, and you built and sold
Yep.
that. And since then, you've released a number of books, and um, looks like this is going to be an interesting conversation.
So yeah, I got my first start in the landscaping business. That was my first business at the age of 21,
Nice.
primarily because I didn't have anything else to do and didn't have any discernible education or job skills. And I thought, well, anybody can mow grass. So I bought a lawnmower, a weed eater, and a blower and started my first business.
Awesome. And yeah, how I suppose that's clearly not where you are right now. So things have progressed since then. I'd love to hear a bit about that story.
Yeah, so I built that business in about 7 or 8 years. We built it into 7 franchises here in Atlanta, Georgia. And
Wow.
I like to say the business did really well until it didn't, because I made a lot of critical first business person errors and lost it and lost everything in the process. Learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
and then changed industries and went into the insurance industry and did a couple of venture capital deals and went into the internet business after that. I did a private equity exit, then went into consulting and sales and management, and then wrote books, and then got into politics. I sit on city council here in the town I live in, and then got into the coaching mentoring business. And now I'm on your podcast. So I've hit the peak of my career right here tonight.
Now you've made it. Now you've made it. You'll be able to tell all your mates.
I'm worldwide, man.
Expect to see this on LinkedIn, featured on the Sideshed podcast.
That's it. That's it.
So yeah, I mean, you've written a couple of books recently. Well, one recently and one previously. I'd like to touch on, I suppose, a few of the things that came out of those books, but like essentially this whole negotiation psychology theme, I think is
Hmm.
something that is super useful to anyone out there, especially in the trades that are, selling
Sure.
a service or selling a product, mostly a service, I suppose. How to handle objections and all that kind of stuff. Stuff we're actually going through within our own business right now. We've got salespeople that are just coming on board, and we're doing all these sales trainings and things like that. So I'm probably trying to scratch
Yep.
my itch to a degree.
Yeah. As I like to tell people, I don't care what industry you're in, somebody's got to sell your product. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have any sales, you don't have a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sales is what makes the world go round, and it's very integral to your success. And the better you are at it, obviously the higher chances of success you're going to have. So if you're not good at it, you need to find somebody who is. And if you need to learn it yourself, then that's why I wrote the book.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So let's dive into it a bit. Let me know a little bit about. Well, I mean, I suppose coming from that trade background, is a lot of what you experienced within that business model with the landscaping side of things, what fueled you to learn more about psychology and like the negotiation side of things?
You know, Obviously, when I started my first business, I was the guy that was out there selling everything. So because I didn't have any real education, I'm a kid that failed out of high school at 16 and didn't go to college. And so I started reading. I did a tremendous amount of reading on business and sales and negotiation and just self-help and making myself a better person. And because I was a guy out there selling every year for 7 or 8 years on every job, I think I just naturally learned some of the psychology behind why people make their decisions to choose you as a contractor or not choose you, and then started implementing those into what I did. And really didn't even know I was that good at sales until I moved to the next company I started, which was in the insurance industry, and then got better and better at it. And we did a majority of the stuff over the phone back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then went on to the next company and the next company. And pretty soon I was doing consulting for Fortune 500 companies and how to sell and how to manage your sales, right? How to manage your marketing and marketing ROIs and sales conversions and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, the psychology behind the sale is what is going to be the difference between you being super successful at sales or not. There's too many people out there trying to tell you that all these cheesy sales lines and closing gimmicks and all this nonsense, and I hate those, quite frankly.
Sure.
I also don't like hardcore closers because I don't think that's the way to do it. So we really teach our program on the psychology behind it. What's the customer thinking? What are the objections going to be, and how do we overcome them? And our big thing is overcoming objections prior to the customer having them. And so if we can take your business and we can figure out how to do that, then we see people's sales conversions double and triple
It's one thing
pretty
we've noticed.
quickly.
We've noticed with a lot of our clients and a lot of our, well, ourselves especially, like the ecosystem that happens within a sales cycle, and how, like, we know if somebody's come to us and they've had some sort of level of exposure to what we do, they've consumed our content, they've listened to podcasts, they've read our blogs, they've been part of our newsletters or whatever it might be. Like
Mhm.
they're far more qualified and more, maybe not qualified is probably a bad word, but they're more likely and willing to sort of engage and go to the
Sure.
next stage, because they sort of already know, like, and trust you to a degree. But it's one thing that we really try and help our clients do. Like, we try and get them become like a bit of a, like, create some authority content so that people go, oh, these guys actually know what they're talking about. Um,
Right.
you know,
Then you have a client that's actively interested in buying your product as opposed to what we call passively interested, right? "Oh, I
sure.
saw this, I might call them," versus, "Oh, yeah, I've seen their stuff. I know them. They're actually experts in their field. They know what they're talking about, or they have a reputation. And now when I call you, I'm actively interested and more open to listening to what you have to say." We call this first interaction with people when you're a salesperson, you have a client. We call this the wall of mistrust that's always there between the salesperson and the client, right?
Mhm.
And clients typically come in a defensive posture, and anything you can do to bring that wall of mistrust down and lower that defensive posture is going to help you make the sale, whether that's
Mhm.
what you've done previously through your podcast or your advertising or through your reputation or whatever, or when you first get on the phone with them, the things that you say. And we script out things for companies and say, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to say to start bringing that wall of mistrust down, so that your client's more open to, what you have to say after that and getting the deal done.
So it's a pretty common scenario, I think, within the trades. Well, it depends. Like, if you work within like day-to-day jobs and projects, like, plumbers, electricians, maybe landscapers, where
Hmm.
somebody might call in for a job. There might be a CSR who takes the call, and they may sell like the $99 site visit to start with. And
Right.
then, so there's almost two sales that can happen in that residential home service space, where you got that initial sale to get the technician to the home, and then you've got technician who's got to go there and actually define what the problem is, and then give them a price on, or like go through, I suppose a scope and figure out what the actual issue is, and then give them a
Sure.
price, which was sort of a second sale, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah. I mean, the first, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, can you speak to that? I suppose, like, a model a little bit on how to,
Yeah. So the first sale, particularly if you're doing what you're doing, which is just pre-sale and getting them out there. And I like to say that, and this applies either whether you're talking about that pre-sale or the person walking out on the job. Too many people fail in that sales process because they think that they need to do all the talking as opposed to asking the questions, right? If you call me about my service, my first question is, well, what are you looking for? What's the problem? Why are you calling us today? Have you talked to anybody else? Has anybody else talked to you about coming out to see you? Who are they? They're a great company. Why didn't you pick them? And well, it sounds like we can help you today. So here's what we kind of need to do. In order for me to get a technician out there, they can do a full service where they can do a blah, 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 blah. It's $99. He'll come out and he'll tell you everything that needs to happen, whatever it is for your service. And then you take that same example, and when your person walks out on the job, you do the same thing. You ask questions instead of talk. The biggest problem people have in that process is those people on the phone just want to talk as
yeah,
opposed to let the client talk.
yeah.
Clients will talk themselves in or out of your service if you allow them.
Yeah, it's one thing we're definitely learning as well. It's that whole, um, like that, like you said earlier in the conversation, that whole, like, sales framework from the 80s and 90s, always be closing mentality. It's so
Yeah.
dead in the water. The and I say this to our sales guys, it's like, you're not selling anything, you're just presenting options, and it's how you
Yeah.
present the options that can solve the problems, um, which really makes the difference. Essentially, you're letting your customer make the decision. It's like, I mean, and make the
Yes.
decision, but you're not like trying to force anything on them. It's like, well, this is what we can do to solve this problem. Do you want to do it?
And
Like, it's your
so
call.
we talk about that first objection. The first objection is that people don't like salespeople, right? They
Mm,
don't like them because they're afraid of them. They're afraid of them because they don't want to be sold and they don't know what's going to happen next. And so one of the first things we tell everybody in a sales situation is, listen, here's what I need to do, Matt. You called me about whatever service it is, garage doors, landscaping, plumbing, whatever. Here's what I need to do. I need to ask you a few questions, find out what's going on. Based on that, I will make a recommendation with the services we have available. If that makes sense to you, we'll talk about pricing, and then I will let you decide if you'd like to move forward. Now, is that fair enough? And you disarm the client. You tell them what's going to happen next. You tell them they get to make the decision. Ask them the questions so you know what you're dealing with. And when they say, yeah, that's fair enough, now we get to move to the next step. The
mhm,
first question is, tell me about your problem. And
mhm.
then here's my product can do, and here's how I can help you. Now, is that something you'd be interested in taking a look at? And if it is, let me schedule somebody to get out there and show you what it is. But it's really about setting that customer at ease, taking away that defensive posture they've got, opening them up, letting them tell them they get to decide. Now, the reality is they get to decide, but I'm still guiding them through that process. I'm gonna help them make that decision. But
Sure,
we push it down a path of them deciding, and that gives them that comfort they need in order to move forward. So
sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I think so often it's like it's almost like it's almost the scripted version of these things that fall over because you're steering people towards something that's on a bit of paper as opposed to something that they specifically need in relation to solving that problem.
right.
And I mean, even yesterday or day before yesterday, I was on a call with a guy who had a business who was selling like media buyers or something like that, and like he's just following this script. And I go, man, listen, stop reading the script. I know you're reading a script
That's
right now.
yes.
Like, just talk to me like a person because I've
Yes.
got a problem here, and you're just talking off a script, and I know it's a script. He goes, "Oh, I know, but I need to follow the script to get the answers." And I'm like, "You don't. You." And
Have
then
a
goes,
conversation with me. Yes.
Exactly. It was just ridiculous, and I was like, "This is
One of our big points, have a conversation with me. Too many salespeople, they're like, so as soon as we start talking about it, I go, hey Matt, how you doing, man? What's going on? Hope you're having the best day of your life.
oh yeah,
And now you just sound like a cheeseball salesperson.
right."
And I can't stand that.
That small talk like intro thing where you like it's
Yeah.
just
It's like, how are you doing today,
so
man? What?
so cheesy. Oh man.
And then we get into the sales process, and you were right. You were right on target. A lot of times people try to sell me something as opposed to giving me, the option to choose, right? So I always use this example. And my HVAC contractor, good friend of mine. So the way he does it is he says, we've looked at the problem and you've got three options. You've got my premium option, my mid-level option, and my low option. They start from 5,000 to 9,000. Where would you like me to start? Because I don't want to go through all of them if that's not what you're interested in.
Mm,
Oh, well, I'd like to hear the $5,000 option. All right, well, let's talk about that. As
mm,
opposed to me making the decision and trying to sell them on the $9,000 option when the person isn't going to do it anyway, right?
mm,
So the $5,000 option works like this, yada, 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 yada. And they go, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference if we want to move up is this. And if you want to move up again, one more, it's this. But we're back to which one of these fit in your budget and which one of these is more interesting to you. Well,
mm.
I think I like the $5,000 option, right? So the whole sales process too, allowing the client to make that decision. One of the things we also teach is we never ask people what their budget is. Terrible question.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they'll lie to you.
Of course I will.
Of
Every
course
time.
they will. And they're going to lie to you low, right? And so here's the big problem. If I tell a customer, say, hey, what's your budget? And they say 4,000, and I say, great, my product's 5,000. What do I sound like?
Mm,
I sound like I'm trying to oversell you something, right?
mm,
Because you told me four and now I'm five. Now, the reality is I can't go to four, but I set myself up for failure by asking you a budget, allowing you to lowball me. And now I have to give you a higher price and I look like the bad guy.
yeah.
Where I should have started the conversation with my products range from 5,000 to 10,000. Where would you like me to start?
Yeah.
And that is a different conversation because I'm no longer not listening to you. I'm telling you my options, letting you decide, and then explaining exactly what it is you told me to explain. That is a huge tip for salespeople.
Yeah. But I
Never
find
ask people their budget.
maybe it's slightly different to what we do, but like we find, when people ask that to us, and if we say, well, we've got products that start at $1,000 a month or $12,000, where do you want to start? Like no one's going to say,
Right.
oh, 12,000 because
Right.
and the problem is, I suppose, as well, like from with us doing it that way, especially like like we're trying to avoid giving people what they don't need, because they'll come to you for one thing, not fully knowing, tell them what they want to
Right.
hear or give them what they need kind of thing. But so I'm not quite sure how that would play. And I know a lot of businesses might be the same. If you look at a plumber, or, someone calls out, oh, I've got the hot water's not working. Okay, well, the options are, realistically, we could replace the thermocouple on your hot water heater, which could be like a $300 fix, or we could replace the hot water heater, which would be a $2,000 fix. But your hot water heater is 3 years over expiry date. And if we do replace the thermocouple, then in 12 months' time, the heater's probably going to blow up anyway. Do you know what I mean?
That's actually not a bad sell though, Matt, because I'm telling you I can fix it for this, but here's the challenges you're going to have. Here's the liability and risk you're going to take, and you get to make that decision. As
Yeah,
opposed to
sure.
be walking in and saying, "Hey, you need a $2,000 water heater," when I
Yeah,
know the next guy walking in the door is going to sell him a $300 coupler.
yeah,
I'm giving you the option. And then when you say, "I'd like to do the coupler," I'd say, "That's great. We can do that for you. You understand the risk, you understand the liability, you understand what, yes, okay, then great, I'll do that." Now, if you want to go the higher route, here's how I can do it. So it's not a bad way to do it.
yeah, sure.
Challenge walking in, selling them a $2,000 water heater is the next guy's going to come in and offer him the coupler and not tell them what
Yeah,
you just told him, which is the water heater is going out of service.
a lot of the guys out there today, they'll run off like an upfront pricing or a flat rate kind of model,
Hmm.
which kind of does what you said before. Like it gives them, well, what your HVAC guy does. It sounds kind of like flat rate, like where you present them with options and you say, well, these are the options for you. Which one looks better? And then you then go into explaining what they are, and perhaps beyond that, what the differences look like.
Sure.
Um, and it typically lowers, I suppose. Well, the feedback I get anyway. I mean, I've never really done it because it was sort of came in after I was out of the trades. But the feedback I've got is, well, if people can actually see that there's options 1, 2, and 3, like
Hmm.
you're not trying to sell them on anything. You say, well, these are the 3 things it'll present that will,
Back to my HVAC guy. He sends me a spreadsheet. It's got
yeah,
3 pictures, right?
yeah,
Boom, boom, boom. Here's the things in this, that plus this, that plus this. And then I get to decide which one I want, or I may call him and ask him a few questions. But at the end of the day, I got to decide. You didn't sell me, and that's what's key.
mm.
You did, but you didn't. And you're going to end up getting the job.
So if we're going to go, like, let's, I suppose, take it to the point where somebody's been contacted through, like an inbound lead or whatever it is, and there might be, and that individual's taking the call. It's super
Hmm.
easy. And I think one of the biggest things I see people tripping up on is they give too much of the wrong information away too early in the piece, which
Hmm.
essentially ends up destroying the sale. Like, for
Yep.
example, and when people are calling around and they're price shopping or whatever, like there's that whole commodity conversation where people are like, well, I just want to quote, what does it cost for this? Because I've got 3 other quotes and I want to go with the cheapest kind of thing, where they don't really understand the depth of the value and what the other options or a bigger option, might be able to prevail for them. But they're on the phone. They're like, I just want to know, what's the price? What's the quote kind of thing?
What I've just told you works perfect in that scenario because if they've called 2 other people, those are the people who gave them their cheapest rate, right? So in my case, I'm going to be like, sounds like you've talked to a couple other people. Here's the deal. The options I'm going to give you, and I'd have to explain them, are going to start at $300 if we just do the thermocoupler, or can go to
Yeah.
$2,000 if I'm going to replace a hot water heater. I can explain either one of those to you. So it really depends on what you're looking for. You know, you're going to have to go that route with this. Otherwise, they're going to be like, well, the other guy was like $50 cheaper. All right.
Yeah. But I think one of the things we get a lot of not great feedback about out in the marketplace is these sites that have like job listings, I suppose, and people
Hmm.
like homeowners and stuff can go on and they go, oh, I want to get this done, and then like all these contractors come back with it. It's like a race to the bottom, straight away.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear. I mean, maybe it's like a slightly paralleled conversation, but what your take is on like not having to be so dependent on those forums and those sort of avenues as your source of work.
I would say that a part of that is the reputation and background and history of your company, right?
Yeah.
If I'm a big player in the field, I'm not playing that game
Hmm.
because I know I've got a reputation. I know what I do, and probably I'm so busy that I don't have to play that game. I find a lot of the people playing that game are the smaller players in the industry, and those guys are always going to cannibalize themselves. You know, I own a chain of restaurants, right? And I hear this all the time. My bartenders and servers will go, "Oh my God, the restaurant down the street selling beer 50 cents cheaper than us." Like, I don't care. They're probably going to go out of business. They're making bad business decisions. So we're going to ride it out and
Mm.
we move on from there. So if you're a player, you're not going to really deal with that anyway. If you're trying to get started, you know, you got to hold your ground. I mean, that's a tough one, but you just got to hold your ground.
I mean, I just typically say to like guys in that situation, again, tying back to what we said earlier in the piece, like you've got to be able to back up your claim. Like it's great. Sure, there's options here where you can join that whole model where you just a race to the bottom on price, and you can try and be the guy who does it more efficiently. But really, is it really worth it? You know, like those people are out there looking for a service, and these sites come up because they're ranked well. There's no reason why you can't also compete on that, or more to the point, like have some sort of local presence and some sort of like a website built which can help you showcase the work you do or help you tell
Sure.
your stories, like have project case studies of jobs that you've done so people can go, that's kind of what I want. Like that makes sense instead of going straight to this lowball,
I'll
sort of.
tell you what's even better is video testimonies from your customers.
Yeah, totally.
Give
Yeah.
me 10. I just finished your job. You happy? Give me a 10-second video testimony. Yep, John, Matt did a great job. Appreciate what he did. The price was good. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Post about 5 or 6 of those. And when you get in that situation, say, hey, man, listen, I don't know what else you've heard, but go to my website, look at the video testimonials. You can see the people that we've worked for. We do a good job, get a good price. If that's what you're looking for, we can help you, but I can't be the cheapest guy on the block.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's one thing as well where people, they don't like, it's obviously kind of an uncomfortable conversation for them to ask it, so they don't.
Right.
And
Well,
and until it becomes part of a process, they typically never will ask it. That's what we try to unpack for them a lot. Is like just make it part of your process to ask that question, because if you don't ask, you'll never get it.
mhm. You just look, sometimes if you want to build and grow your business, I tell the people, listen, if you want to build and grow your business, you might need to do things you're uncomfortable with.
Totally.
I'm telling you what you need to do. So go do it. If I'm your coach, if I'm your mentor, if I'm the guy that's telling you what to do, go do one and then do two and then do three. And pretty soon you'll be doing it on every call.
Mm. So do you think like this whole, like when we're talking sales out of negotiation, like this whole ecosystem that we're kind of discussing does come into play at every level and every size of business?
100%.
Yeah.
Sales and negotiation. So here's another thing I tell people all the time. So sometimes we look at individual small players and we look at medium-sized companies and we look at big companies, right? So let's say we're looking at a big company. What's a big company in Australia? Give me a giant company there. Anyone.
Vegemite.
Vegemite. Okay. Who runs
which
Vegemite?
which ironically is now American, apparently. So yeah. Anyway.
It's run by a person. It's not a big giant corporate entity that is, you think it is because it feels like it's like IBM or Apple. No, it's run by a person. There's one person there, and that one person is no different than me or you. That person just got a job there and got promoted into their new position, and they're the person you're either talking to or doing the website or doing the marketing. Or it's still run by people. People are people are people. I don't care how big the company is, still run by people, and they're all the same, right?
Mm.
People react the same, their psychology is the same, human nature is the same, they think the same. Everything's run by people and how big the company is. So yes, these levels of negotiation work at no matter what the size of the company, because in no matter what the size of the company, it's still just people. I've
Mhm.
negotiated in billion-dollar companies. I've negotiated in my little $100,000 landscaping business when I got started. You're still talking to people, and people react the same way.
So with the negotiation side of things, essentially it's a back and forth conversation between two or more parties, and
Yep.
often based around price. So
Yep.
what's the general framework that we can communicate, I suppose, to the audience here in relation to, well, this is how you go into this. This is how you prepare. This is how you go into this conversation. These are the things you need to do to make it a successful negotiation.
So I tell people this when they're going to go into a sales and negotiations situation, no matter what products you're selling, there is a process that you go through. We call it the 4-box process, right? There's an introduction, there's a fact finding phase, there's a presentation phase, and there's a close phase. The close phase is not where you close the sale. The presentation phase is not where you close the sale. We close a sale in the fact finding. And I don't care what product you're selling. I don't care how big the company, it's still in the fact finding phase. And the fact finding phase is where we figure out what they're looking for, why they're looking for it, when they're looking for it, who else they've shopped with, why didn't they buy with that company? And then we move into what's the problem that they've got. And then internally, while all this is going on, I'm formulating in my head how whatever I've got is going to solve that problem. And we find out all those things because what we're trying to do and what we teach is we're trying to overcome their future objections, right? So no matter what your audience sells, I would guess that in every situation they've been in, there's probably 4 or 5 objections that they have every single time, right? It could be a price objection, it could be a timing objection, it could be a whatever. There's always 4 or 5 objections that all your clients are having. It's not like they're making up 1,000 different objections. So if we know what those objections are going to be, then we build our sales process around those objections. When we find out what, why, who, when, and who else they've talked to, we build our system around those objections based on those questions. We do all this in the fact finding. So by the time we get to the presentation, it's really, and by the way, we're asking questions all the way through the process, making that connection with the client. We're getting them to sell themselves. We use positive affirmations and yes statements. And by the time we get to the presentation, we're really explaining to them what they've already agreed that they want. But you got to build that sales process around those objections, finding out those questions. And it's really hard to me to get into that because that's like a 4-hour training session. But
It's a book.
it's a book. Yeah. But that's really what you do. No matter what you're selling. I can tell you when I sat and sold a $6 million piece of software, I did the same thing. I sat at the table with a bunch of people at a $1 billion company and we just talked for like 30 minutes. I wasn't selling. Too many people think they got to sell. Too many think they got to talk. Too many people think they got to explain everything there is to explain, and they don't. What you need to do is find out what the deal is, have them fall in love with your solution, and then you move on. I always use the car sales example. Have you ever bought a car, Matt, from Car Lot? Okay. When you go on the car lot, they don't hand you the owner's manual and say, read this before we take a test drive.
Right.
You don't need to know everything about the car. You need to know what color you want, what brand you want. Then let's go take it for a ride, roll the windows down, turn the music up, pretend like we're driving by our neighbors, showing off our new car. We get you to fall in love with the product. Then we get into the details. Too many salespeople think they got to explain everything.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that, like we've got this new program, which we're very busy with. Foundationally, we help like customers define their offer. And so much of that is what you just said then, because until we go through this process with them, they're going into too much detail. It's like what's the problem?
It's throwing up on the client.
Well, exactly. Or more to the point, it's like they're trying to resolve the things that aren't actually the problem. It's like the clients are coming to them. It's not because they've got an inefficient air conditioning system. It's because they're bloody freezing cold in the winter and they're stinking hot in the summer. Like and I know, because when you're in business, sometimes you get these polarizing views of what you think you should be selling because you do it every day and you're so used to that language and you're so used to like you're trying to communicate with people the way that you're expecting to be communicated with based on the level of knowledge that you have, which they don't.
That's a whole nother problem in sales. So I use this example a lot. Here's the very worst thing you can do as a salesperson. Start using technical jargon.
Right.
And here's why. Matt, if I was talking, I'm a pilot, right? If I started talking to you about ATC commands and like, I need to know what your barometric pressure is, and we're going to talk about the frequency you're going to switch to next. And after that, we're going to talk about your altitude and we're going to talk about your approach and your arrival. Right now, your brain's still trying to figure out what a damn frequency is that we're trying to change, right? So I'm talking to you at a level that you don't understand. And here's what I always tell people. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and they say something you don't understand? What does your brain do? It stops.
Yeah.
It stops because your brain starts trying to figure out what you said. And then by the time your brain re-engages in the conversation, the person you're talking to is like 30 seconds down the road, and now you're behind the conversation. So your brain's trying to catch up to the conversation. And while your brain is either stopped or catching up, it's not retaining any information that is going in that this person's saying. They're talking just like lips moving and nobody hears them. The problem is you said something they didn't understand. So you need to understand the first thing you need to do in sales, stop using technical jargon, stop talking fast, and always stop in the conversation and do what we call pause for effect and a check-in.
Mm.
If I said, Matt, do you understand what an ATC frequency is? No. Okay, well, basically, when I'm flying, I have to change frequencies about every 20 minutes. Does that make sense? I've got to talk to somebody else because I'm flying farther away. Does that make sense? Yeah,
Mm.
okay, that makes sense. Like in your HVAC, we've got this SEER reading. I don't know what I'm talking about, by the way. And it's 1.7. Do you understand what that means?
Mm.
I don't either. So here's what that actually means and how it affects you,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to just throwing it out there and saying it and moving on, and the client's going, "What the hell is a SEER rating? I don't know what he's talking about."
You
Right.
know
So,
what I call it? Passing the mum test. I always say
okay,
to,
go ahead.
I say to our clients, right? Okay, because when we come back and we say, okay, what are your services? What do you do? Tell us. And then they come back with this jargon.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, go and send this to your mum and
I love it.
tell me if she understands anything you've put there.
That's great.
The mum
Yeah,
test. It's never failed me. No offense, mum,
that's
if you're
exactly.
watching.
And here's the other thing they do. And here's a big mistake I see salespeople do all the time. I love this one. So I'll train them on only talk about these 5 things. Whatever your product is, tell them 5 things. And they're like, but they want to know more. No, they don't. They
No, no,
don't need
no.
to know more right now. They need to fall in love with the product. 5 things. But what happens is they say 5 things to client A, and client A says, well, explain this to me. And they go, oh, okay. And then when they go to the next client, they explain those 5 plus what the first client asked. And that client asks them a different question. And then the next client, they explain the 5 plus what the first 2 clients asked. By the time they get to the 10th client, they're regurgitating a book again.
Yeah.
They've gotten off the track, right? Because they think everybody wants to know what the last person asked, and they really don't. Explain your 5 things, let them ask you a question, move on.
And you know,
Explain the 5 things.
and exactly. But you know what? Even like when you're saying they fall in love with the product, we find for most of our clients, it's not even a case of falling in love with the product. It's falling in love with the outcome.
There you go.
Because if
Yeah.
you look at like, so we have loads and loads of solar companies, right? Like, you know, we're getting really good results for solar companies because what do they typically do out there when they're trying to sell something to a customer? They're saying, oh, we'll give you this unit, which gives you a 300 kilowatt output at, you know,
Mhm.
3 amps. And we've got this storage facility, which can enable, like, what are you talking about? Like, people don't know what that means. People just want to know, we can run your electricity off grid. Or we
Will
can,
it power my refrigerator and my AC?
yeah, well, you can reduce your energy consumption to 0 during the
Yeah.
day by using our system. Like, that's what they give a
Yeah.
shit about, you know? And so
Yeah.
I think so often it, like, people get caught up in that as well. It's like, oh, we'll sell them on this product because it's a Mitsubishi 418632 and it's awesome. Like, people don't
Yep.
give a crap. They don't care.
I remember I did a sales organization and we had the top salesperson and a new person. And the new person's like, I don't feel like I can sell until I can properly explain the max out of pocket. And I looked at the top salesman. I said, can you explain the max out of pocket? She goes, what's that? Exactly. You don't need to educate your clients. You don't need to know everything. It's just that you're going to fail if that's what you think you need to do.
Man, this has been an awesome conversation. I feel like we could go on forever on this. You have written a book about this recently. Know the art of sales and negotiation. The art of sales and negotiation. I'll put the link to the Amazon to Amazon in that for you guys if you want to go check it out. I haven't yet had the chance to go through it, but I've bought it, so I'm going to go through it next. And what was the other book again?
First book was called The Dropout Multi-Millionaire.
Well, drop out.
And that's how to be successful in business with no money, no education, and no clue, because that was
Yeah.
me.
Well, I can confirm for you listeners and viewers out there that book is actually on Audible. So if you want to go listen to it, go get it because I just bought it before this call. So, no, mate, it's been awesome having you on the show. Thanks so much for sharing sharing this wisdom with us. I mean, I suppose it's one of those things which, truthfully, can always evolve. Like the sales process, understanding that whole psychology behind sales. Like, it's one thing it's like, in my experience, it's never one and done. Like, it's a constant evolution. There's always something you can do better.
Always. As long as we're always moving forward, we're always getting better, we're always making more money.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or, or creating a better customer experience, which results in more money, lag and lead effects, all this sort of stuff. So, mate, thank you so much. Where can the listeners get hold of you if they need to?
Super easy. www.brianwillmedia.com. That's my website.
I've got it all here. It'll be in the show notes for you guys out there that want to check it out. Head across to thesiteshed.com, search Brian, and you'll be able to find this episode with the show notes there.
Matt, I appreciate you having me on the Site Shed, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, man, you've made it. So thanks so much for that. And guys, if you've got any questions, or if you have any like follow-up questions around anything specific around the negotiation or sales or whatever it might be, hit me up where you see this come through in the group or in the emails or whatever. I have no doubt Brian would be more than willing to come back and do a bit of a deep dive into some of these more specifics.
100%.
So yeah, mate, appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I'll let you get on with your evening.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Ciao. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Site Shed podcast. If you like the sound of 30 qualified proposals in the space of 90 days, I just want to recap. Head across to tradie.wiki/offer. Watch the videos, fill in the form, and make sure you book a time to have a chat with me. This is for businesses that are making $50,000 a month in revenue, are located in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, or the USA, and you're a trade business or a contractor that works with project-based work. Head across to tradie.wiki/offer. Yes, I realize it sounds too good to be true. Trust me, it works. Do it now. I look forward to chatting to you soon. Ciao.